We are technically in Ezekiel 40, but we're going to do a little groundwork to kind of set up, because if you read the last part here, there's a couple really great and really awesome sections, and then there's some very long, very difficult to read sections that read very much like a blueprint. If you recall, we're in this section where God is sort of laying out his plan for this restoration that needs to take place. And depending on who you are and where you're listening from and what time period and whatnot, you're hearing multiple levels of what it means for that restoration to take place. If you're in Ezekiel's time, you have this hope and a desire that they're going to get to return home, and that God is going to bring in a new leader and guide their people into this nation that they had the opportunity but they lost out on previous to this. If you exist past Jesus' time, you get to see how God's unfolding plan was pointing to something far greater, and what that means for us as far as hope and the things that are yet to come. And we've been promised new leaders who would fix the corruption. We've been promised a new land. There's been warning against that overarching power of darkness that seemingly still is lurking in the corner. Its desire, like it says in the Cain story, is against you. But God has laid out prophecy, laid out some sayings in those previous couple chapters about how ultimately that plan that was laid out in Genesis chapter 3 is still going forward exactly the way it's supposed to. There will be one day one who will crush the serpent. And now we're going to move into let me ask you, above chapter 40, what does your Bible title this section?
Vision of the New Temple.
Vision of the New Temple. This is a big deal, obviously. Why? According to Ezekiel's time, what is the condition of the old temple?
Gone.
It is gone. It is. What was the condition before it actually got overthrown?
Corrupt and
Yeah,
graffiti.
it was all messed up. Yeah, it's worshiping different gods. It was that's a good word. It was chaos. We know that from the very start of the book. If you recall all the way back, chapters 1 through 8, we have that lovely, just nightmare vision of the temple that was. This is where we get those real popular pictures of the throne chariot that's on wheels, and there's this figure sitting on this thing, and it leaves this corrupted temple and flies out of the land. And now, to bookend the start of the book with the end of the book, now what we're going to move into is this just real happy, beautiful temple ending that sort of completes this story arc that's been taking place all throughout Ezekiel.
I'm having a little bit of trouble when we got to Ezra. Those guys, the guys that remembered the temple, were all crying and sad because they remembered what the temple was when they built that new temple.
So the big question that you're asking is, what is this temple? Because if you're reading Ezra and Nehemiah, those people fully believed that was supposed to be this.
Physical.
And I think, because I said we're going to do some groundwork here, I think you'll see what's really happening here. In order to understand the need and the necessity for a new temple, we have to understand the story of the temple itself. We have to look and see, what was the temple? Why was the temple? And the best place we can begin to do that is in the beginning, right? And so in the beginning, like Genesis chapter 1, we see, what is God doing in the beginning? Just 40,000-foot view, if you could sum it up in one sentence.
Walking with Adam.
He's creating, we'll come back to the walking here in a second. He's creating, and what does that creating look like? In fact, it relates to what you just said about chaos. Exactly. Genesis 1, without getting into all the arguments of whether there's 7 literal days or 7 figurative days, the function of Genesis 1 is that we have a creator God who is in the ministry of bringing order out of chaos. Now, what that meant, I have no idea. Like, I don't know what the pre-earth state was, other than there was nothing and also something there, chaos waters, and God begins to create, and he begins to bring order to it. So Genesis 1, what we see is there's going to be some realms that are created. Do you guys remember the realms? What realms are told to us in Genesis chapter 1? Yeah. In the beginning, God created everything that was up there, and everything that was down here, right? The heavens and the earth. He brings order to those realms. He fills those realms. He then instills a partnership with those realms on earth. We see those in the form of humans. He instills his image onto these human image bearers in this creation. He gives them tasks and duty. Once we get to Genesis chapter 2, what were the tasks of the image bearers here on this earth? To rule over the beast. Yep, that's Genesis chapter 1. And then Genesis chapter 2, be fruitful, multiply, so fill the land. So be continuously creating and filling. And to what was Adam told to do in the garden?
Tend it.
To work it. To continue God's work in creation of bringing order out of chaos. And anybody in here who's ever had plants or a garden, if you're skilled at that, I'm not. You know that you can take something and throw some seeds into some ditches and stuff and watch it grow, and it's great. But if you want that thing to produce well, then you care for it, you tend it, you pay attention to its needs, and by doing that, you're bringing order, and the production will quadruple or whatever it is when you tend to that garden. And so by that Genesis 1, he creates these two realms. He is physically present in both realms because he's omnipresent. So by the time you get to Genesis 2 and 3, we're told of two very particular people, because in Genesis 1 it tells us that he created humanity, and in Genesis 2, the human. And so we're told of two different people, or two very specific people. Adam, the man, is formed from what? Yes. He is formed from dust, and then he is breathed life into, and then what does God do with him in Genesis 2? He takes him and he places them in this place called the garden. Where is the garden located? In Eden. It's important to see this distinction. What is in the very midst or in the middle of the garden? There's this tree, right? So here we go. We've got man, we've got beast. It's not good for him to be alone. Yeah, don't you love my stick figures? It's not good for man to be alone. And what is God doing in this particular place as we read on throughout that story? Yeah, he's walking around, right? So the idea is that he's physically present here in this specific place. Now, why this is important to understand is because this is the first picture of the heaven meets earth place, where man is existing alongside the physical presence of God and those beings or beasts that exist up in the heavenly realms, aka here's the serpent and all that kind of stuff. They are the first sort of set apart creature in creation that they will become representative of the priestly system that'll take place later on, because what you don't see is it uses the same language when it tells them to work and keep the garden as the exact same words and languages that will be given to the priests who are to work and keep the temple. So here's this physical presence of God. It's the heaven meets earth overlap. It's this incredible situation where man has this amazing potential. And then what do we see? We see immediately they're tempted, and they do what they shouldn't do, and they fall and are going to ultimately be disconnected and separated. Before that happens, though, immediately after eating the fruit, they realize they're naked. They realize they're two separate beings. They realize that they need to hide themselves from shame and sin. Then they hear the sound of God walking in the garden. So here we go. We've got the sound of God. He is walking, and he starts to ask, man, where are you? What are you doing? Why are you hiding? Right? Here's this opportunity for some confession to take place Adam immediately seizes the opportunity to blame God for a wife. Right? The first good thing in creation. Here it is. That sound is going to play a key role here. Because of what took place in the garden, now they can no longer be in the heaven meets earth overlap place anymore. It's too dangerous for them. They're a fallen being. They should not partake in the other tree that's in the garden, the tree of life. And so God is going to remove them from that, which will symbolize that first picture of death 1.0, or however you want to say it. And so now the question is, how are we going to get the man back in the garden? We are told that they are, where outside of the garden are they located? We're actually given directions. Yeah, we're given directions in the next generation. They're technically still in Eden, and we find that out because Cain, once he falls, he is going to ultimately be exported out and to wander in the world east of this land that they were allowed to be in. So the physical presence of man in this earth was still close, quote unquote, to the heaven meets earth overlap. So now you start to question, okay, well, what is supposed to happen from this point forward? Because there's a separation. The next generation gets separated even more. So the next scene that we're told is about this guy named Noah. And what do we know about Noah?
Has a boat.
He does have a boat. Right? Here's this guy who has a boat. And we are told something very specifically. He is called to build this boat. In fact, he's given dimensions. He's given the materials. He's given all of these instructions. But why is Noah the guy called to build this boat?
A man of his heart.
Close. You're close. That's how David is called. But yes. How?
Most righteous person.
Yeah. Yes. Genesis chapter 6, verse 9 tells us very specifically that Noah was unlike anybody else in this generation. The rest of the world is just broken, fallen, messed up, spilling blood, just being ruled by chaos, yes. And it calls Noah very specifically, it says that he is blameless and righteous. The words are actually the same words that are going to be given to the sacrificial lambs. They're unblemished, right? Unblemished and righteous. And we're told that he does something that sets him apart in his blameless and righteousness. Anybody know what he does?
Walks with God.
Yeah, he walks with God. Here's that walking thing again. So Noah builds a boat. If you read Genesis 6 as a blueprint, you're gonna be very disappointed when you go to build the boat, because you're gonna realize there's just not enough information there to actually build this boat. So if you go to the Ark Encounter, which I know some of you have, it's great. It's amazing. It gives you a great visual picture of what this boat could look like, but you have to make some leaps to get there. Like, you're just going to have to. Genesis 6 is not a blueprint to build this boat. Instead, what we see is Genesis 6 is going to start to lay out a picture of this three-tiered system in which the blameless and righteous one will be in the midst of, in the middle of, alongside the animals, and will be safe from the death and destruction that's taking place on the outside. Sounds a lot like this, doesn't it? In fact, if you look at the neighboring countries, their flood narratives, what you find out is their hero of those flood narratives don't build a boat. In fact, Babylon is one example of this. You know what he builds? Yeah, a ziggurat. He builds a ziggurat. A ziggurat, a tower, which is the temple of their gods. A floating ziggurat is what they build. So Noah, if you're looking at this picture, what we see is Noah is actually walking with God. He's blameless and righteous. He's taken through the chaos waters of decreation, he lands on a mountain. He gets off the mountain. He immediately offers up a sacrifice. That sacrifice becomes a pleasing aroma to God. God then chooses to make a covenant with the people not to destroy or allow the chaos of construction to fall back in on itself. And so here's this picture of the man in the temple and walking with God. Then you get the next major story. Who's the next major figure after Noah?
Moses.
Close. I mean, not close. Wrong book. Abraham. So here's this guy through whom which is going to be given this incredible promise that through his seed, he will then fill the earth, and all those who bless Abraham's seed, he will bless, God will bless, and all those who curse Abraham's seed, they will be on the side of a curse. And what we see regarding this same theme is, now, does Abraham have a heaven meets earth moment? Can you think of a time where Abraham has a heaven meets earth moment?
About the sacrifices.
Yep, so that'll be a little bit later. That's actually going to play on the theme. I'm not going to talk about that, but that's a fun Friday night if you want to go and compare how that theme fits into this theme. Specifically, can you think of a time where Abraham is just chilling under a tree on a mountain? Yeah. So this isn't actually the first time that this happens, believe it or not. That's a little bit later in Genesis. The first time that this happened is Abraham is called up out of Babylon. He is told to go into this specific land that God is going to make a promise to his descendants to have. And what we find out is he goes in, and remember, this is that story where he's with his nephew, Lot. And do you remember what Lot does? They get into this land, and you know what Lot does?
He goes to a different place.
Yeah. Why does he go to a different place?
Look better.
Yeah, so this is the brilliance of meditation literature. It doesn't give you all the stuff up front. But once you start to compare these stories and start to see, remember the juxtaposition, that's where you start to find the real fun stuff, right? So what does it say? Lot comes in and he looks into this beautiful, green, luscious, amazing in his own eyes garden that is now known as the Dead Sea. And if anybody's ever been there, it is quite the opposite of all that, which we'll get to why that takes place. And he goes, "Yep, I'm taking that. I want that Eden." I wonder if that's going to come back to bite him. So then God says to Abraham, "I want you to go and I almost gave it away. Go do something in all this land." Do you know what he calls him to do?
Conquer it.
Nope. I want you to go walk this land. I want you to go and look, because this is a promise I'm going to make to you and your people, to your descendants. This is all going to be your land. This is all going to be your piece of the pie. This is that promise. In fact, in Exodus chapter 13, it says this, verse 17, "Arise, walk through the length, the breadth of the land, and I will give it to you." So this length and breadth, right? I'll just do this, right? Deep and wide, the length and breadth of the land is going to be given to Abraham, right? And all he has to do is get up and tour it.
You said that's in Exodus?
Oh, I'm sorry, I said Exodus. No, Genesis 13, sorry. Genesis 13. Thanks for catching that. Thank you for catching that. Yeah, that's going to be a little bit different situation. No, Genesis chapter 13. He is to tour the promised land, tour the land that God is going to promise Abraham. And then Abraham is called to be righteous and blameless and to walk with God, again, playing off this same exact theme. He'll have a couple of moments where he's sitting underneath the oaks of Moreh, where he's going to experience the heaven meets earth moment where the Lord shows up, the angel of the Lord shows up with these two figures, and he falls down on his face, and it's this whole scene before they're going to walk down into this lovely area here and allow it to become a complete desolation because of their wickedness and disgusting destruction. But here's the story unfolding. Abraham's going to experience a little bit more of the temple heaven meets earth moment, but it's not going to be in a boat, and it's not going to be in a garden that seems like a great, luscious, amazing garden. In fact, it's going to be in the hills up here in this area, and it's going to be like, okay, well, this is kind of a pain, but that's okay. That's apparently what God wants us to see, that what's good in his eyes is really what's important and not what's good in our own eyes, because that leads to death and destruction and a sea that's so dense with salt that you can just float in it, and it's awesome. So here we go. We're getting the pattern now. The next time we're going to really see this pattern unfold is when we're going to be called to now build the heaven meets earth place. And what is that called? Not yet. Now we're in Exodus, by the way.
Tabernacle?
Yes. So here's Moses. He's on another mountain. My mountains are getting worse. Right? And in Exodus, specifically in 24 through 31, we're going to get this really intricate telling. The way that the Bible calls it is it's a pattern. This pattern is going to be given to a man who's sitting on top of a mountain, Mount Sinai, and he's going to be told to go and to build this thing. And what this thing is going to be is a tent, right? Here's this mobile version of there you go, that's a tent. That is a tent. I'm telling you it's a tent, okay? A mobile tent. And this tent, this pattern is going to be given to Moses to fulfill. And then once he completes this mission alongside many of the workers that God chooses and fills with the Holy Spirit, this pattern now is going to be placed right in the midst of any dwelling place that Israel or the Hebrew people are going to set up. So it can be in the wilderness. It can be in the promised land eventually. And right in the middle of the tent is what?
The Holy of Holies.
The Holy of Holies. right in the middle of the tent, and I'm going to pretend this is the middle, is now the heaven meets earth place. In fact, it's so crazy that the moment they consecrate the tent, now this fire and the smoke comes down and fills this center portion of the Holy of Holies. Whenever they set this tent up, they're supposed to face it a certain direction. Which way are they supposed to face it? Nope. The Holy of Holies, specifically, is supposed to be in the westernmost part of the tent because, remember, they are symbolically east of Eden. And so as they move into each of the sections of the tent, it is theoretically, or it is meant to symbolically represent heading back to the personal presence, the overlap of God. I promise all this is going to tie together once we get to Ezekiel. So now, Abraham, and not only Abraham, now all the people, Moses and all the people, all the Hebrew people are called to be blameless and to walk with God blamelessly, with God now physically in the Holy of Holies presence in the midst of their tent, in the midst of their encampment, right? Wherever they are at that point. Now, this becomes a big deal because, as you know, as you follow the story, we're going to have lots of issues, there's lots of moving pieces. And so eventually there's going to be a new guy who could be the seed of the woman who might fix the whole problem. Once the people demand that we need a king like everyone else, now that we're going to get a new guy on the scene, and he is going to make a promise to build something a little more structurally sound. And what is that now?
Temple.
Right. So by the time you get to 1 Chronicles, you're going to get this incredible story in 1 Chronicles 28, where David desires upon this mountain, Mount Moriah, if you remember, the same scene where Abraham is going to sacrifice his son long before. Now on that same mountain, he wants to build for him a temple. And God's going to give him the plans, but he's not going to be allowed to actually build that temple. Anybody know why?
He's a man of war.
He's a terrible father.
He's a terrible what? Father. He's really not a great. He's not really not a great husband either. He's pretty. Yeah. He's constantly failing. He goes and takes the counts of the numbers of their army. I mean, he's just like a total failure. But the Bible calls that total failure a man after God's own heart. And so you're questioning, like, how does that work? Because the same guy, the whole reason he wanted to build this temple in the first place is he found himself naked and dancing along the movement of the ark that they restored because those jokers brought it out to a place of war and tried to use it as a relic of war to help win, like a good luck charm. Well, now they've got it back because the Philistines started experiencing in their own temple like a bunch of boils, and it's very uncomfortable. Hemorrhoids, if you want to go the funny route. And they're like, get this thing out of here. And so the Israelites get the thing back, and now David's like, we're bringing it back. And it goes into the house of this person in their land, and that guy for like 6 months or however many months it was is blessed. His family's blessed, and David's like, I want that. Like, that seems cool. So let's build a physical dwelling place for God. The heaven meets earth overlap, and God's response to David is no.
The ark was missing some of the parts. The staff and
Yep. We don't have to get to that part because that's not important for this part. But yeah, that is another have a great time next Friday night. You and your wife sit down and open up and look at the missing pieces and see how it fits, and then come back and report to us. No. So here we go. We got a guy, a man after God's own heart, but God's going to give him what he desires. I wonder if that works out well when man sees what they desire and chooses to do those things on their own. He's going to give over to them what he desires, and that desire is ultimately some blueprints. The exact same word, a pattern. And if you start to follow 1 Chronicles 28 and many of the chapters afterwards, you're going to see a really long, drawn-out, here's the length and the breadth and the width, just like the boat, just like kind of the land, just like the many chapters for the tabernacle, and at the consecration of this incredible building, which his son is going to get to build. Solomon, the wisest man on the earth, is going to be like, who even needs this building? Because God is everywhere, but we're going to build this building, and it's going to be awesome and under my name. And he's going to spend a total of, anybody know how many years?
14?
Nope.
10?
Nope.
11?
Nope. 7 years building the temple. Good job. You spent a lot of time building the temple using slaves of their own brothers, but that doesn't matter. We won't get there, right? And then the Joker goes and spends 14 years building something else. his house right next to the temple. I wonder if that's going to come back to bite him. You like that, Jerry? I like that one. Okay, so he gets the pattern. Now Solomon is going to get to build this. The heaven meets earth place, consecration of the temple. God comes down. It's this incredible showing. It's an amazing masterpiece. And now what we get to is, by the time you get to Ezekiel, this heaven meets earth place is a done total mess. It's been completely destroyed. The heaven meets earth presence of God is like, oh, I have no idea where it's at. And I don't really know what to do with any of this. And so we pick up in Ezekiel chapter 40. Verse 1. In the 25th year of our exile. Let's stop there. Why does that matter? Why does that matter to us? What does chapter 1 tell us?
I knew you was gonna go there.
The temple area restored.
Wait for that. We're given a date. In the 25th year of our exile.
30th. So this is.
Wait, keep going. Keep reading.
In the 30th year, in the 4th month, and the 5th day of the month, as I was among the captives by the river of Chebar, that the heavens were opened, and I saw visions of God.
Yep. Now read the next one.
In the 5th day of the month, which was the 5th year of King Jehoiakim's captivity.
So the exile is not in the 30th year, but we'll come back to that 30th in a second. The exile, by the time he experiences the first vision, right, is in the 5th year. So if the first vision took place in the 5th year of the exile, what does that mean about this year?
20 years later, I've come.
Yeah.
Yikes.
This is 20 years later. Now, why do we care about that? Well, what do we know about Ezekiel? And I wish Chad were here because I was going to prove my point that he disagrees with me on. You're going to have to tell him. What else did we just find out about Ezekiel? They gave us another year there. Was it the 30th year or was it the 5th year?
He was 30 years of age.
Yes. So the line that I particularly take, that Chad doesn't, I can say that because he's not here, is that I think this is his age. And why would that be important?
He was going to be a priest, and he was starting his duties.
Correct. Because Numbers tells us that it's in the 30th year of that priestly line that they begin their temple work, right, as a priest in Jerusalem. Which means if that's when this started, he was a priest sitting at the Kebar Canal, experiencing the presence of God in Babylon. Now what age is he? Try again. Nederland schools. Huh? 50.
Which I didn't go to very often.
He's 50. And why would that be important?
That's just wrong.
If 30 was the time that they were supposed to start their work in the temple.
50 was the time they ended?
Correct.
Retired.
Yes. Numbers 3 tells us it starts. Number 6, I believe, tells us is when it ends. Somebody can check that on me so I don't make sure I get it right. But regardless, 30th year is when he receives the first temple vision, and he's now 50 years old when they receive the second temple vision. Here we go. So 25 years in, right? 25 years. Why? Okay, let me do it this way. Is 25 an important number in Israel's history? You really got to be a nerd to get this, by the way. So.
Where's Chad?
I know.
He'd know.
He would know. Let me ask you this. Is 50 an important year? Yes. Good job, Bible nerd. What is the Jubilee? Yeah.
Everything goes back.
Yes. So God, starting in Genesis 1, starts to build in these cycles, right? And these cycles of work and rest. And he allows those cycles both on a day-to-day basis and a week-to-week basis and a year-to-year basis to repeat. Every 7 years, they're to do something. There's supposed to be this like return and this give this land a total rest. Remember, in Chronicles, that actually said that it's the reason why they're in Babylon for as long as they are, the 70 years, according to Daniel, is because they didn't give the land their Sabbaths. And so because of that, God took their Sabbaths back, according to the end of 2 Chronicles, by putting them in Babylon that whole time. And every 7 times 7, which is the 49th year, right? They're to then use the whole following year as this thing called the Great Jubilee year, which means if you owed me land and I took that land for you, I can keep it for 49 years, because on that 50th year, it goes right back to you. Because God went and he divided up all the land in Israel amongst the 12 tribes, told them very specifically how this is supposed to happen. Immediately, specifically Solomon is going to start to repurpose those things as a king. He's going to start taking some land and giving some land, and ultimately Solomon just takes over whatever the heck he wants to, which totally sucks. It's exactly what happened, why they shouldn't have had a king in the first place, because they're going to take your land and take your kids and hide your wife, right? All these things. And what we're going to see is there's still supposed to be hope, because there's this 50th year promise that they're going to get to go back. God's promised this to them. And so if that's an important number, then is 25 years important? Say it out loud. It means they're only halfway there. They're only halfway there. Think of the hopelessness that they're feeling at this point. Okay, in the 25th year of our exile, at the beginning of the year, on the 10th day of the month, in the 14th year after the city was struck down, on that very day the hand of the Lord was upon me, and he brought me to the city. Now, just to give you I'm not going to go through this whole rabbit hole, because we are going to run out of time here soon if I don't get moving. The first day of the year, on the 10th day of the month, is a direct hyperlink back to a very important day that would take place in Israel one time a year, every single year. Anybody know what that year, according to Leviticus 16? Anybody know what took place? Call it, there you go, yes, the Day of Atonement. Which is the temple has been sort of desecrated over the time because of the people's sins, and so now we need to consecrate the temple again, and we need God to ultimately, because we listen to his words, we need him to forgive us our sins and remove those trespasses. So here it is the Day of Atonement in the halfway point of the exile, and he is now taken somewhere. And where is he taken? There. He is taken to a city. What city? That's a great question. Did you notice it didn't say? It just said there. So we have to be careful not to fill in the blanks, because it did not say Jerusalem. It says it took him to the city. Verse 2, in visions on which was a structure like a city to the south. When he brought me there, behold, there was a man, and the appearance was like bronze, with a linen cord and measuring reed in his hands, and he was standing in the gateway. And the man said to me, Son of man, look with your eyes, hear with your ears, and set your heart upon all that I'm going to show you, for you were brought here in order that I might show it to you. Declare all that you see to the house of Israel. Okay, we've noticed this pattern. We've seen moments where the people have experienced the heaven overlap on earth, experience the personal presence of God's heavenly presence here on earth. Now we've seen two patterns here where two individuals are going to have these meeting moments, and they are given specifically the blueprints, if you will, to build both a boat, a tent, and a temple. We've watched it happen over and over again. And so what do you think is about to happen with Ezekiel? He's going to be given the blueprints. Or is he?
Some measurements are going to follow.
Yes, measurements are going to follow. In fact, they're going to follow for a couple pages here. However, if you start to pay attention to the measurements, number one, there's some intricacies that stand out that are very different from, look how many chapters it took to describe a tent, right? Look how many it took to describe the building of a temple that God didn't even need or want anyways, right? And here we're going to go through 3 or 4 chapters, except we're not going to be told at all any heights of any building that exists in this city, in this vision, except one. And it's the very first one that we're told, which, what does he begin to build here? Or what does he begin to see?
The east gate to the
outer court.
Yes. East gate. I wonder if the east gate's a big deal. Where are they? East of Eden, right? So here's the first gate, and there's a wall, and we're told here's some length, here's some breadth, here's the height. From that point forward, no more heights are mentioned in any of this building. Why would that be the case?
Could be it's not a physical temple the temple is here.
You jumped ahead, but yes, absolutely. You're a Bible nerd. You're certified. I'm certifying you. In both of these patterns, including this one, here it is. Now go build. What is missing from Ezekiel, I encourage you, go read it at home. It's very dry, but you might enjoy it. Is any kind of, here's the pattern. This word is not used at all. Pattern. In fact, there's a really funny thing, I'll look it up here in a minute, where it gets right to the point where you're expecting him to use the Hebrew word pattern, and instead he uses a word that rhymes with it. It's great. I love it. And what else is lacking is now go build. What did he just tell Ezekiel is to do? Just look. Take it all in, because you're going to go tell Israel what this is. And now what's happened is these three things are now being portrayed in this pattern. Did man build Genesis 1? Nope. Did he have anything to do with building this heaven meets earth overlap in the garden? Nope. And in Genesis 13, the promised land that was being promised to this guy, did this guy do anything to build up, defend, anything? No. In fact, let me just tell you, this guy spends exactly one verse in the promised land after coming all this. It spends more time talking about his route to the promised land. It spends one verse telling him he made the promised land, and then the next verse says, oh, there's a famine that arose and he went to Egypt. And you're like, hold up, what? This guy didn't have anything to do with really anything in the promised land. He finally purchases one cave, the cave of the two naked people, Machpelah, in a valley surrounded by trees pointing west, and it's this beautiful little garden scene, and he uses it to bury his wife. And that's the only land he owns and does in Israel at all, but he is called to go to this land and to walk the length and the breadth of it. Come and see the promises that God has given. It's exactly the same thing that's taking place here. And if you miss that, then what you do is you begin to hyper-literalize this thing. And once you do, then you get questions by the time you get to Ezra and Nehemiah and go, well, did he build it to the same specifications as what was just told by his contemporary Ezekiel? Maybe it's not about the specifications. Maybe we're actually learning something more theological than we are about the literal building here. Questions before I move to this last part here?
I must have missed that. So the cave, there was naked people?
Yeah, that's a rabbit hole. I'm going to step around. We'll talk about that at a different time.
I have not heard.
Oh, that's just, see, you call the Bible boring.
That's Tuesday.
Yeah. The pattern. The pattern is this word tavnik. So the tavnik, he's given the tavnik, now he's supposed to go and build it. This is the pattern. And what happens is the Torah takes place in Ezekiel, and right at the moment where they're told that there's supposed to be a Torah to now take this tavnik, instead what he gets is a toknit, which is doesn't quite have the punch in the English transliteration, but it's like all the word, but one change.
What does that mean?
It means come see the perfection. So here, co-build the pattern, come see the perfection. So now when you're thinking about this as not a hyper-literal building, what would it be telling us about the fact that there are no vertical heights being told other than the one wall that has the east gate in it? What would that mean?
9 feet.
9 feet? No.
That dimensions were
Put an
imperfect.
half on 6 cubits.
Yeah, but not, ignore the, okay, you got the one wall with the gate, but other than that, there's not height, huh? Interesting. What would that mean theologically then? Hey, look at that. There's now this big heaven meets earth overlap, where there's no height we have to worry about, because that physical presence of God is there. I'm going to end here, and we can talk about some questions here, but I want to talk about the reason for the vision. The closest to the reason for the vision that we're given is in chapter 43. We'll come back to a couple things here. Actually, no, I'm going to tell you this real quick. If you map out, and there's some really great people who have mapped this stuff out. If you map out exactly like how he talks about this, there's really nerdy stuff that's taking place that are playing with a bunch of the Jubilee 50 and 25 things and sevens, and there's all this kind of really nerdy stuff if you keep reading it. But what you see is right in the midst of this big, huge building that they're building at that moment, or that's already there. He's not building it. It's already there. It exists. Right in the midst of this thing is something very special. What would you find in the middle or in the midst of the tabernacle and temple? The Holy of Holies, right? That is absolutely not what's in the center of this plan. In fact, what is in the center of this plan is in chapter 43, starting in verse 13. Anybody have a title above that?
The altar.
The altar. Why would that be significant? Think about, juxtapose, the Holy of Holies. What do we know about the Holy of Holies? One person, one time a year, may enter, and he better do things right, because if they just willy-nilly walk in there with some strange fires, they're gone. What about the other one? What about the altar? Anyone on a daily basis can come to the altar. See, what you're seeing is there's this whole storyline that's taking place, and he's showing them this temple that has no limits, that has no heights. Right in the center of it is the thing that anybody who wants to can possibly walk to and go to and offer up whatever. So why is it, if this isn't supposed to be a literal thing and it's supposed to make more of a theological statement, why is it that this is being shown to him? Starting in verse 10, 43 verse 10. As for you, son of man, describe to the house of Israel the temple. Describe it. Remember, this is already built. You're going to describe it. That they may be what? Ashamed. Why would looking at this vision of this heaven meets earth moment be utilized as a tool for God to show shame to these people?
That the physical temple was not what was intended from the get-go.
Yes. You had something far greater you could have had and could have experienced. But because you were stiff-necked and hard-hearted and chose to do what was right in your own eyes and demanded of God that we do this and did this, and you didn't listen to the Word of God, you chose to do whatever was in your own right in your own eyes. You failed miserably at experiencing this heaven meets earth moment for all of your existence. And so what we're going to do is we're going to give you pages and pages and pages of just beautiful and very mundane to read architecture, which shows God taking the chaotic and restoring order. Think about the wilderness. There's no, what do they always say? There's no 90-degree angles in the wilderness. There's no straight lines in the wilderness. Everything you read here is going to be super straight, super structured. It's going to be very intentional, and every aspect of that temple represents God is bringing order from all this chaos. And when the people look at this temple system, this new temple system that Ezekiel was privy to see, they're going to feel shame because they totally missed out on this incredible opportunity. Finish what it says. That they will be ashamed of their iniquities, and they shall measure the plan. And if they are ashamed of all that they have done, make known to them that the design of the temple, its arrangements, its exits, and its entrances, its whole design, by the way, that whole design right there is the word tovnik or toknik. It's the complete. It's the whole design. Show them the toknik instead of show them the pattern, the tovnik, right? Show them the toknik, the whole design, and make known to them as well as its statutes and its whole design and all its laws, and write it down in their sight, so that they may observe all its laws and its statutes and carry them out. This is the law of the temple. The whole territory of the top of the mountain all around shall be most holy. Behold, this is the law of the temple. So why is he being shown this? One, it's going to bring shame that they totally missed out. Two, they're going to be reminded that there's still a potential for a jubilee greater than they'll ever experience. There will be a new temple. But it ain't going to have anything to do with what Zerubbabel is going to build in Ezra and Nehemiah. In fact, just them building that is ultimately just a replay. This is why Ezra and Nehemiah is actually a really letdown of a book, because it's just a replay of the sins that brought them there in the first place. Not only that, the temple that they build is just like a shoddy representation of this magnificent, at least beautiful thing that old wise Solomon built. And so, of course, we live post-Jesus, and what we're going to see is that he wasn't talking about a physical temple. He was talking about a new kingdom that will be ultimately ushered into this or onto this earth, that Jesus himself will begin the process of ushering in, and we have the opportunity to continue his work in this creation, to bring order out of chaos, to work this creation the way that the priests would, and that we are called to be a holy nation, set apart, a kingdom of priests who are to then go and work creation for the will of God and bearing the images of God, or the image of God. Okay, what questions, thoughts, or concerns do you have about any of this?
Does the Pharisees, do they accept Ezekiel as they don't see this as...
So there would be no Pharisees at this point. That's going to be a temple system that develops out of the Ezra Nehemiah, or theoretically out of the Ezra Nehemiah. Actually, the Pharisees, Ezra would be kind of like the first prototypical version of the Pharisees. Here's this hyper-literalized, hyper-radicalized version of a priest who wants to bring the people back to the heart of God, and so he's going to use the Torah as weapon against them ultimately. That's going to be sort of the system that will develop into what will be known as the Pharisees. So the Pharisees didn't even exist at that time.
So a Pharisee today, do they accept Ezekiel, or they just read right past it?
Well, yeah, they accept Ezekiel. They think that the temple that was built in Ezra and Nehemiah, and I'm putting words in the mouth of a big nation, so there's a lot of views. But a majority view would be that temple was not the temple. Remember, the glory cloud does not fall on the temple in Ezra and Nehemiah. It becomes just a very... it becomes a meeting place. They still hope that their works and efforts to rebuild and redesign and cleanse will cause God to show up in a big way, because, and there's a lot of history behind that, with the Maccabees desecrating, and then the Romans coming in and Herod the Great helping build and fortify the thing and all this stuff. There's a whole story there, but at the end of the day, the glory cloud never fills the temple. They're still hoping for a temple to be built, and this would be what they would expect a third temple to be. They don't accept the temple built by Zerubbabel as the way God meant it. And so the Temple Mount looks at Ezekiel, the Temple Mount looks at these plans and builds a pattern off of it best they can, and is the moment they have the opportunity, they're going to start placing brick and mortar down on that mountain. Yeah. Any other questions, thoughts? Okay, there's more to discover from the temple as we complete this, but we probably only have about, I'm going to say, maybe 2 more weeks left total of Ezekiel. And so we're going to fly through this. I encourage you to go and put on an audio Bible and just listen to these last couple chapters, and just that way you can kind of get the feel for what's going on, and really just meditate on these things. Look for the things that are the same, the things that are different, and then what it means for Jesus to do what ultimately he did, and what he would declare about us and at Pentecost, and how Paul would envision these things. So, yeah. Okay. Would somebody mind closing us out in a word of prayer?
Thank you, God, for, first of all, for creating the earth for us, for me individually. It's an incredible thing. Thank you so much for forgiving me of my sins. Anybody that thinks that we're perfect people just because we're Christians, that's not the case. Or at least I'm not. Maybe someone else is. I'm not. We thank you so much for everything you do for us. Please take care of us during this week. If there are medical needs for people, please put your hand in there and make things better. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.